Hello, Cornerstone Church. Pastor Phil here, coming to you with the second installment on the newsletter idea that I mentioned last week. I would like to follow up with that and try to do these as podcasts, and hopefully they'll be a blessing. My hope and my desire is that they would be a blessing, that they would speak to people's hearts, that they would help you to just take some steps forward in God and experience just a shot in the arm spiritually from Him. So today I'd like to continue. On Sunday, we were talking about prayer requests, and during the praise and petition time, we referred to our brother Bill Tatro and the situation that he needs for ongoing prayer and the intensity of the need on his part. And somebody mentioned the idea of including fasting with our praying, which we have, as you all know, done frequently in the past and will continue to do again. And as it turns out, this Friday, being the first Friday of the month, is what has always been our monthly day of prayer and fasting for special needs and unsaved friends and loved ones and so on. We've gotten away from that a little bit because since the middle of March, when we shut down for COVID-19, we were praying every day. So we weren't focusing on a special day of the month. And even now, we are still doing Mondays and Fridays. But I would like to think about the fact, and I don't think it's coincidental, I think it's providential that it happens to be this Friday, since we just spoke about it on Sunday. So what I'd like to share, and another providential aspect of this, was that I recently, in my own devotional time, read through the Book of Esther again. And for those of you that are familiar with it, or if you're not, I'll let you know that the Book of Esther prominently spotlights the idea of fasting. Fasting and prayer are one of the prominent features of the Book of Esther. And just to give you a brief overview, Esther was basically a young Jewish girl who was an orphan. Her parents died, we don't know how, but she was taken in by her cousin, Mordecai, who must have been significantly older than she was, because he could not have taken her in and played that role. He basically raised her. So he must have been older, but he was her cousin, and provided a very good upbringing for her, making the best of a bad situation in the loss of her parents. And we are in the time of the exile, and we are in Susa. It refers to as the capital, and in the reign of King Xerxes. And Mordecai is one of the exiles in the reign of King Xerxes. And what happens is the book opens with Xerxes throwing a major party for the military leaders of Persia and Media. Persia and Media were the kingdoms that took over the Babylonian Empire after Nebuchadnezzar had passed away. So this is all a continuation of the Babylonian exile for the Jews that were brought there by Nebuchadnezzar. So now several kings later, Xerxes reigns, and the book begins by he's throwing a big feast and celebrating something. It doesn't really go into detail in terms of what it is he's celebrating. Basically celebrating his kingdom and his kingship. And at the end of, I don't remember what it was, 120 days, I think it was, 180 days of feasting, the king calls for the queen to come, and he basically wants to parade her in front of her nobles. And she says no. She doesn't want to be paraded. Maybe she feels that this is exploitive or whatever she thought, but she says no. The king flies into a rage, and he banishes her from the kingdom and from her position. So then, to assuage the king's rage, to pacify him, his nobles come up with this idea of having a beauty pageant and bringing all these beautiful women into the capital, having the king spend the night with each one, and then from that choosing the next queen. The one that he loves, the one that he favors, will become the next queen. Now, Xerxes likes the idea, of course, who wouldn't, and carries on that idea. And Mordecai enters Esther into this beauty pageant. So Queen Esther gets entered into the beauty pageant, and she just wins everybody over. She's not only beautiful, but she's humble and she's diminutive. And her charm and her shy quality just wins everybody over, and she becomes the queen. So then what happens is a plot develops because the king, Xerxes, honors Haman, who's an Agagite, and what that means is he's a descendant of Agag, who's an Amalekite, who was the nation that attacked Israel. And there's an ancient grudge between them because the Amalekites attacked the Israelites, and God declared that he would be at war with the Amalekites forever. So Hanan, who is a descendant of Amalek through Agag, sees that Mordecai doesn't honor him in the way that he feels he should be honored. And Haman holds a grudge and decides, instead of just killing Mordecai, I'm going to annihilate the entire Jewish nation. All the Israelites throughout the entire kingdom of Xerxes, throughout the entire empire, I'm going to annihilate them. And he dupes the king. He gets his permission to do that and issues a decree that on the 13th day of the 12th month, everybody is to attack the Jews and annihilate them. Now, Mordecai responds by mourning in sackcloth and ashes. And Esther is concerned about that because she doesn't know what's going on. She just hears that her cousin, who raised her, is going around town in sackcloth and ashes, obviously mourning something very significant. So she sends clothes to him, and he refuses to put it on. And she sends a messenger to him to find out what's going on. And he tells her about this plot to annihilate the Jews. And he tells her to go to the king and plead with the king on behalf of the Jews. And Esther has no idea what's going on. She's a beauty queen. She doesn't know about politics. She doesn't know about petitioning the king. But what she does know is that there's a law within the palace and the king's household that anybody who goes unannounced into the king will automatically be put to death unless in that moment the king has mercy on them and extends his scepter to them. So Esther shares with Mordecai this reality. She says, I haven't been called to the king in a month, and I can't just walk in there and make a petition. He'll kill me. So Mordecai says this to Esther in that moment when he's trying to plead with her for help. And unfortunately, I closed my Bible and I lost my page. Mordecai sent this answer, do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. And this is Esther chapter 4, starting in verse 12. And he says, going on in 14, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. So Mordecai will hear none of her denial and her plea for safety. And he challenges her to realize that she's in this position for a reason. And so Esther comes up with this reply. It says, Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Now, Esther obviously had some kind of a religious upbringing because she immediately goes to fasting and prayer. In this moment where she is putting her line, literally putting her life on the line for the Jews and the Jewish people, all that she can think about for protection for herself is to get people to fast and pray to God on her behalf. And what we see from the rest of the account, I encourage you, if you've never read the Book of Esther, read it. If you haven't read it in a while, read it again. Because God moves powerfully. God wakes the king up in the middle of the night and sends him to check the records, and he finds there something positive about Mordecai, and the whole situation gets turned around. And Esther and Mordecai end up victorious. Haman and his family end up getting killed, and the plot against the Jews gets turned back on those that seek to destroy them. All because God's people turned to him in fasting and prayer. Fasting and prayer is very powerful. And I want to encourage you, please consider praying and fasting with us on Friday. Pray for Bill Tatro. Pray for strength and healing, a healing miracle for him. Pray for his wife Phyllis, that God would give her strength and that they would be able to bond and connect in the midst of all the parameters that have been placed upon them and the distance that is being forced upon them. Just pray for them. Pray for the church. Pray for the community. Pray that God would bring his powerful word to bear in our lives, that we would see revival at this time, that God would heal our land. There's so many things that we need to be praying for and praying about. And it would really help if we would add fasting to the mix. So please consider doing that. And one last point on a completely different note. But it was brought to my attention this morning by my wife that there was a Zoom discussion that Converge Northeast facilitated on the question of race in response to the George Floyd killing. And because of other issues that were going on in the church and in our lives, I did not make that available to the church, and that was an oversight on my part. But I'm going to send that out as an email and hopefully on the WhatsApp link as well. And I want to encourage you, take some time and look at that and listen to that and see what it is that God might speak to you in relation to that as well. So may the Lord bless you and keep you.